Again, good afternoon to everyone. Let me welcome everyone to the Dr. John T. Washington Community Service Award and Scholarship Luncheon. We will have the opening remarks, welcoming by Associate Dean, Mr. Lyman Brody, College of Arts and Humanities.
Good afternoon, all. I'm Lyman Brody. I'm an Associate Dean in the College of Arts and Humanities, and you can tell I have a bad voice. So I hope you can hear me and understand me pretty well. I want to thank you for coming out this afternoon. This is a wonderful occasion for us each year when we honor the life and legacy of one of our former faculty members and community advocates, John T. Washington. Most of you that are here know something about his life and legacy, and if you haven't spent some time learning about him, I would encourage you to do that, after you leave this service today. We are all grateful for the memories that he left us, and indeed fortunate that his life and legacy continues to live through the lives of many of you in this room today. Administrators, faculty, staff, students, and community members, he left an impression on each of us. As many of you know, John T. Washington was an associate professor of sociology, and he was one of the first African Americans to hold a faculty position here at UCF. Dr. Washington modeled a life of service for all of us to imitate, service to his family, his students, and his community. That kind of leadership always stands the test of time. We are really grateful for his example. I'm very happy that each of you have taken time from your busy schedules to spend some time with us today, and I know you will enjoy the program. So thank you again.
Reflections, and now we'll have Dr. Jackie Gardner, Miami-Dade public school teacher, certified family counselor, certified civil court mediator. Dr. Gardner, please.
To this beautiful university and wonderful members of the staff that I've just met, Dr. Joanne Stevenson and my Aunt Alma Washington, I'd like to thank you for this honor to share with you a retrospective kind of experience that I've had with Dr. John Thomas Washington. My aunt is such a wonderful person that when she asked me, I was overwhelmed with her request. So here I am. When I think about my uncle, John Thomas Washington, I think about the honor, the glory, and the greatness, and the respect that this university and this community memorizes him for and as. I think that from what I know about him, he is worthy of this kind of honor. I think he did inspire, influence, and affect the larger community, even multiculturally, its citizens, and the sharing of and the interaction of those citizens in their locality where they lived at, with good purpose and good reason. So why am I doing this? Because I think that it is important for me to get a chance to share some of my thoughts and a couple of my philosophies about community. So who am I? Well, I'm a hard-working man because I knew when I left home from high school I had to work because I like to eat. And no one was going to feed me as much food as I like to eat. So I figured if I worked, I have my own money, then I could go buy 2 hamburgers, or I can eat. And I learned how to cook also because I like to eat. So if I wanted to eat something, I don't have to depend on someone else preparing it for me. I can go in and whip up something myself. So, okay, that's who I am in that aspect. I'm also a soon-to-be retired Dade County Public School hospital homebound instructional program teacher. And in December, I will be retiring, and that's an amazing feat myself. Well, that's amazing. I'm just so amazed. I never thought that I'd be at this particular point. I'm also an aspiring certified circuit civil court and family mediator, and soon to be appellate court mediator certified as well. Just remember, I haven't gotten any cases yet, so hopefully I can get some cases and I could, make something happen. But it's an exciting experience for myself. What have I learned? I've learned from Dr. John T. Washington a few things that I'll tell you later that I needed to draw upon as I began to be a teacher, to gain a PhD in education, interdisciplinary studies, and also making choices in my life, throughout my life, making choices, making decisions, which was real tough making decisions. It was real tough sometimes, and I knew if I made the right decision, I'd be okay, so it was real tough. But I was able to consult other people, and by continuing to work on making decisions, making good decisions, I was successful in some, and some I wasn't successful. So what I thought I would focus on today would be whose shoulders do I stand on? And when I was working on the PhD, when it comes to research, we are supposed to begin with whose shoulders do we stand on as far as our topic is concerned, because we have many people who have conducted research and it may be the topic or the area that I'm focusing on. So who are they? And what can I learn from them? And how can I add what I'm doing from what they did? So whose shoulders do I stand on? Well, let me go around and say that at some point in my life, there was a lot of talk, a rhetoric, a prose, or whatever you want to say, about role models. So I tried to find a role models. I found a couple of role models, from football players that but then time got a little more serious for me, economically, spiritually, socially, and so I had to make good decisions. So what I thought about was, well, I gotta have an uncle, my Uncle Carson. I saw him go to high school. I saw him go to high school and work. He had a job, and I saw him fixing around the house, doing things around the house, and when his mom talked to him, she spoke to him and said something needed to be done, and he would get busy on it. And he wasn't complaining, even though he probably did complain, but I saw him doing that, and I saw him go to college, and he was going to school, and he was working. I saw him doing that. So when time got kind of hot for me, when I had to make decisions on what I was going to do with my life, because I knew I had to take care of myself. So I thought about that. I said, well, okay, if I go to college and then I have a job, then I can support myself. So I went to college, my bachelor's degree, and then I had a job in the evening. So I was able to support myself, so that was great. Further on, when I got out of college, I went to the military, and my Uncle Carson, went to the military also. So I figured that if he always looked okay, he wasn't begging for money from anybody. So I say, well, if I get a chance to go to the military, I go to the military. So I went to the military, and that worked for me, and I came out with the GI Bill, and I would have money for college again. So I went for my master's degree, and when I went to the college, I was in the reserve, the Coast Guard reserves, and I said, I'm gonna go out to this college with my uniform on. That way, they'll pay a little more attention to me. So I went out there in my Coast Guard uniform, and next thing I know, they were shaking my hand, and I was in school. So I had, I had monies from the GI Bill, so you know, my master's was paid for with my GI Bill, and then I had like 1 month of money left over. So that worked out fine. So I used my Uncle Carson as a role model. My mother was also one of my role models. I saw her cooking and I saw her singing, so I've been singing most all my life. It worked good for her. And when I was in my bachelor's college degree, I used to go around campus walking and singing all the time. And people say, hey, how you doing? I say, I stopped singing and say, yeah, I'm doing okay, and then I go back singing. So I enjoyed that, so that was great. My wife, Mary, she's a wonderful person, and the wonderfulness of her allowed me to work on my PhD because I was married to her at the time. And all you PhD and doctors in here, you know that your focus on your work and your material while you are in school is very, very, very important, because the focus comes out in your work. So if you're having family situations or economical situations or people situations, that can get in your way. But because my wife was a university secretary, she understood the essence of education, and so she was very supportive along the way until I was amazed, and I made it. So I took upon her as I learned from her in certain ways as something of a role model to help me on my way too. My grandfather Eddie, he went to work every day. so I never think about staying home. I just go to work. My grandmother Leola, she was a very good cook. Oh man, she could just cook real good. She was a wonderful person as well. And my Aunt Bertha, she could cook very well. My Aunt Alma, she can cook too. And she always treated me just like she treated me today, well. She always treated me with respect, and I always appreciated that. My cousin Alfonso, he was always neat. He dressed neat. And I saw him dressing neat, and I tried to dress neat, but I had a hard time until I learned it was just the clothing that I buy. So I started buying better certain clothing, and I was able to be neat. And then there was Dr. John Thomas Washington, and I met him somewhere around 1960s, and I was in the 5th grade. And when I first saw him, he was walking tall, and he had a neat shirt and pants on, and he walked as if he had some kind of purpose or something. And I've just watched him as he walked right on by into my aunt's house. And he was quiet, some sort of quiet. So I never forgot him. And so I saw him again, and I spent a little more time around him, and I was at my aunt's house, and I looked into one of the rooms, which is the library, and that's where I saw all these textbooks. And I looked at those textbooks, and I said, wow, sociology, organizational behavior, and psychology. And I wanted to look in those books. I had a little interest in those books. I was curious about what was in them. That later fueled my curiosity about working on my PhD. And I wasn't afraid of the textbook. I mean, I have slept with the textbook. I thought that, osmosis would happen and some of this information would go in there. I tried it. It didn't work, but I tried it. But through that introduction, I was able to see that, oh yes, I could do this. Through these role models, I was able to see that I could work and I could go to school at the same time, because I knew someone that had done that. if I couldn't see that, it would be difficult for me to implement it. So when I say role models, I say these kind of people that help me make decisions, life decisions, and I appreciate that very much. So without further ado, I just still want to appreciate the time and the respect I've gotten so far, and I'm really glad to be here, and I think that there's a definite great purpose that you all are working on, and I'm thankful that I was able to see and recognize the quality of this still great man, my uncle, Dr. John T. Thomas Washington. Thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Gardner. We would like to move on to the presentation of awards. First presentation by Mr. Anthony Majors, UCF Film Department. Mr. Majors, please.
Good afternoon. First off, I don't want to take too much time because I think that we have a DVD from the Golf Channel that will explain our community recipient much better than I can.
My father was a caddy in Mobile, Alabama. They say that people would come from miles around just to watch him hit golf balls. But he never had the opportunity. These kids have opportunities.
Just south of Orlando, Florida lies Tangelo Park, a neighborhood where 17% of the young people live below the poverty line. On land where oranges once grew, Vietnam veteran and former corrections officer Bob Biggers saw an opportunity to grow the lives of the community's youth.
First thing you gotta do is to get in a think box.
Tangelo Park had serious drug problems. Working in jail, I see kids from both sides of the fence. And I want to make sure that what little I can do to try to keep kids from going into the correction side.
Coach Biggers came to me 11 years ago, and he had a desire to reach out to the community. Golf is a perfect game which you can really teach the game of life in. Tangelo was a prime area to connect with and offer kids this great game to learn and build character, build self-esteem.
And Tilo was born.
1, 2, 3, Tilo! Finish, hold him. Finish, good.
Tilo teaches the game of golf as well as life skills.
If you can learn to conduct yourself properly on the golf course, it bleeds into how you conduct yourself in real life. We want to make sure the kids not only play golf, but we also want them to have table manners. We want them to answer the phone properly, dress properly. These things will carry the kids later on in life, more so than making a couple of birdies or a couple of eagles.
Good job, man.
As Bob likes to say, gentlemen and gentlewomen. That's the way he describes these kids, and they really are becoming that.
I joined because it gave me an opportunity to learn something new. It teaches us how to be proper and respectful to adults.
Once Tilo participants master the basics of the game, they attend instructional sessions at Orange Lake Resort and Country Club, where they are taught by PGA professionals at the McCourt Academy.
Get your grip. All my instructors really enjoy these Tilo kids. They have a lot of fun with them, a lot of laughs, and they really enjoy it. And those kids are very appreciative.
They're really great listeners, and I think just by them being out here, they're probably some of the most well-behaved kids in their classes, I would imagine, just by going through this program. You can see it in their eyes when they come out here. They love being out here. It gives them some memories growing up that they enjoy the game of golf, and they'll play the rest of their lives.
I love Tilo. It's always been there for me. It's just like my backbone, pretty much raised with them. I always wanted to join the tour. That's my future goal, and I'm trying to pursue it.
Attaboy. The kids are what it's all about, get them started in golf. It's been my pleasure to do it.
TILO relies on people like McCord to volunteer and donate their time. Equipment, instruction, and practice facilities are provided to the kids and their parents at no cost. And unlike other junior golf programs, TILO encourages parent participation.
This is a way of spending quality time with your child, learning with your child, and something they can do together. So they love it.
There's nothing better than a parent playing golf with a child. It creates a great bond.
With parents at their side, they see how TILO is impacting their children's lives.
To see them when they do make something and they slowly start to get it, and they know when they've hit a good shot, it's a good thing to see.
There's an old saying, it takes a village to raise a family. I look at this as a family, and you know, each of us have a chance to steer them in the right direction. It's a wonderful opportunity for our kids.
Hey! Coach Bigger's vision for TILO was to reach out to the youth of Tangelo Park. For more than 10 years now, the program has welcomed children throughout Central Florida.
The kids, they come together, they play together, and it's all because of Bob Bigger's compassion, Bob Bigger's desire, and the belief that he has in what he's doing.
Bob Biggers is a terrific guy. He really loves those kids, and it comes through every time he brings them out there, and they really respect him a lot. He spent countless hours with those kids, and basically it's out of the kindness of his heart.
He's always been there for everybody. He's always helped everybody out. He never says no, and he's a great man.
I want to leave some type of a footprint here on earth that I tried to do something, not only for me, but for other people. And I think that's kind of important, that I leave a legacy.
And now to the man who works and volunteers with no pay for 9 months out of the year, every weekend, Mr. Bob Biggers.
Wow. Well, it's with a great deal of humility that I accept this award. And I was, like they said, I was born and raised in Orlando, and I never heard of Professor Washington. But if I had known him, I think he and I would have been friends. We would have worked with the community. I want to thank Professor Tony Major for nominating me for this award, and I thank you guys for giving it to me. I have a question. Why do people do community service? You sure don't get paid a lot of money for it. Maybe it's because of the people that you know or surround you. I have to start off with my mom. We like to say back in the day, there was no opportunities for girls in Orlando to do anything. There was no sports, there was nothing. And my mom started either the first or one of the first Black Girl Scout troops in Orlando. She was going to do something, make sure the kids do something, and I saw that. Then my ex-mother-in-law, Mabel Butler, was one of the first county commissioners in 150 years in Orlando's history. She was the first. And her phone number was listed in the phone book. People would call, my trash is empty, call Mabel, okay? Another person who I look up to is Professor Alzo Reddick with the Soldiers of Scholar. I'm a former soldier, he's a former soldier. And as a matter of fact, he had hired me to work at UCF, but that was at a time when the budget went bad and lost some money. I was gonna quit my job to come work for UCF. I'm glad I didn't. It's been bad for my morale. But, and my job was to go and recruit soldiers, to get them to come to UCF, and also to find opportunities for them to do community service. Well, guess what I do now? And it's free to the college. I go out and get the soldiers opportunities to do something in the community. Another person that affected my life is Mr. Harris Rosen. Mr. Rosen gives every child in Tangelo Park full 4-year scholarship. And it's unfortunate kids don't take advantage. I lived in Tangelo, and my 2 kids
unfortunately didn't take care of it. They got full golf scholarships at South Carolina State, so that's where they went. Another person who had a big impact in my life is a guy by the name of Allison Anthony. He was the president of the Homeowners Association. He came to me and said, Bob, we want to do something with the kids in Tangelo besides basketball and drugs. Can you help out? So 13 years ago, we started this thing. We started with 5 kids and 7 golf clubs and a bucket of balls. We want the kids to be gentle men and gentle women. The first thing you have to know about TLO is our rule number 1. Your pants can't sag, and you gotta wear a belt and your shirt gonna be tucked in. And in our 13 years, our claim to fame is we've never had a girl get pregnant or a boy go to jail. So that's more important to me than getting a Tiger Woods. Now we have about 80 kids. We do golf lessons at Orange Lake Resort, Orange County National, and Celebration Golf Course. And their pros teach the kids. We have a life skills class taught by a certified etiquette instructor. We teach the kids table manners, how to answer the phone. And on Saturdays mornings, we have tutoring. Orange County public school teachers who are kids are in the program teach. And we also have soldiers from the University of Central Florida, soldier scholars who come in and do tutoring as well. We've had one child in the 13 years who graduated from college. Guess where he graduated from? UCF. Okay. So again, I just want to thank you for this award, and I will treasure it for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Okay, the next award. Mr. Ray Hines cannot be here. They're starting the FCAT today in our school system, so he's actually giving the FCAT. So I have the honor of introducing Stephanie Doxol, Liberty High School senior. And Stephanie, please, would you come up? Stephanie is a Liberty High School senior. She's excelled in athletics, basketball, track, weightlifting, golf club, gospel choir. She's a member of the National Honor Society. She also works with Pure Tutoring, Habitat for Humanity, Relay for Life, church, but also she finds time to help the homeless. I think all the above proves why Stephanie is an exceptional young lady. And let me read something that Stephanie wrote. My education and goal in life is the most precious thing to me, and I'll be filled with joy and honor and readiness to succeed if I was permitted my wish of getting this scholarship. Although my dreams are excessive, I won't let anything stop me from what I am capable of doing. If I get the scholarship, I will use it not only to better myself, but to better the United States. What more of a scholar than this young lady? Please, Stephanie.
I just want to say thank you for this award. I am grateful for it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Inez Ford. I'm the Associate Director in the Office of Student Financial Assistance, and I have the great pleasure of introducing the John T. Washington Scholarship Service Award recipient. First, I'd like to say thank you to all the students who applied for the scholarship. We had many great applicants, but let me tell you a little bit about Sanisa. Sanisa is a senior majoring in political science with a 3.958 GPA. Give her a round of applause. She describes herself as honest, determined, and civic-minded. And as such, she's been very involved on campus, on and off campus, in the following clubs and organizations: National Society of Collegiate Scholars, Vice President, former Secretary; Multicultural Student Center, member of the Leadership Committee; Phi Alpha Delta Pre-Law Fraternity; Campus Advent Ministries; Faces Modeling Troupe Incorporated, and she serves as the director of her church's Pathfinders Club. Some of her community service involves feeding the homeless once a month, fundraising for world hunger, mentoring children in the church, in addition to participating in their camping trips, socials, and other activities. She volunteers at the Ronald McDonald House, tutors underprivileged children on the weekends, and serves as a mentor for Big Brothers and Big Sisters of America. Actually, it's Sinessa's involvement with Big Brothers and Big Sisters that has been life-changing for her. In her own words, my involvement in various organizations and activities has diversified my strengths, friendships, and knowledge. I've found a renewed love for children through mentoring for Big Brothers and Big Sisters of America. My little brother looks up to me, and I can see the influence that an interested person can have on a child struggling with school. This relationship has changed me to become interested in another area of law. I want to specialize in protecting the unfortunate children who end up in our foster care system. What a great, great career goal. Without any further ado, let me introduce to you Sanisa Griffith, the John T. Washington Service Scholarship Award recipient.
I wasn't expecting that introduction, but I would like to thank the UCF's African American Studies and John T. Washington Honor Society for this great honor, and I can't wait to use it to further my cause of helping children. Thank you.
Sanisa, on behalf of the African American Studies, the John T. Washington Scholarship Selection Committee, I'd like to present you with this $1,500 scholarship for the next academic year. Congratulations. Thank you.
It's time for invocation. Before invocation, let me introduce Mrs. John T. Washington and her family. Every year, we're so blessed and gracious to have you here. Mrs. Washington, thanks for coming out to come this year. And Mr. John Pittman, Director of Financial Services, will do the invocation. John, please.
Good afternoon. Our university community is made up of many individuals from diverse cultures, diverse religions, and faiths. So as our leaders in prayer, I'd like to ask each of you to, in your own way, do a silent prayer for this occasion as well. Let us pray. Father, we want to invite your presence here this afternoon and ask your blessings upon this occasion as we take time to honor some of those who labor among us, who take of their time, their effort, and their energies to help someone who may not be as fortunate as they are. And to remind ourselves as well that each of us has something that we can do, something that we can give to benefit someone else. Lord, we would be remiss if we didn't take this opportunity as well to lift up to you those who are struggling because of all of the different tragic events that's been occurring in our world, and ask you to help them to recover in their lives and to let us know what are things that we can do to be a part of the solution instead of a part of the world's problems. These things we thank you for. Amen.
Hi, my name is Monica Pierre, and I'm the current president of the John T. Washington Honor Society.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aubrey Sherman, and I'm the current vice president of John T. Washington Honor Society.
John T. Washington Honor Society was established in 1996 with the mission to uphold Dr. Washington's legacy of the three guiding principles of leadership, scholarship, and service. Presently, we still aim to uphold these three principles in everything we do. This school year, we have volunteered with Harvest Time International, sorting clothes for those faced with tragedies in Haiti and Japan. We've also volunteered with Orlando Rescue Mission, a Christian-based homeless shelter, caring for the toddlers in the nursery. We also cleaned the streets of Paramore with the UCF Black Alumni Association. These are just a few of the community service events we put on this school year. This school year, we were able to start 3 book scholarships for the John T. Washington Honor Society and its dedicated members, thanks to Dr. Stevenson, our advisor, and the African American Studies Department.
Dr. Washington's legacy for this organization still lives on today through us, because with age, this organization has grown in size and diversity. With the members all holding the same common goal, to learn, lead, and serve with our time here at UCF. We learn from our older members about balance and focus. We're leading on campus in our organizations such as SGA, PLC, MOI, undergraduate research, and the McNair Scholarship Program. Lastly, we are serving our community on and off campus.
Greetings again. It's my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today's program. I'm going to introduce him by way of a little story because I think it's quite interesting. About 2 or 3 years ago, I was at a wonderful little get-together for a group of us that serve as mentors for people training for marathons. Believe it or not, I've done a few of them. And we were standing around sort of the end of the evening and with a few people, and we started having a conversation. And so I met this young man, and he said, well, now what do you actually do? And I said, I work at UCF. He said, really? He says, oh yeah, I went to UCF at some point back. And I said, really? I said, yeah. He says, as a matter of fact, you know, I've had some really good memories about UCF, some really interesting things. In fact, there was one person that really had a profound effect on me. And I said, really? I said, well, tell me more about that. And he said, that person's name was John T. Washington. And I said, really? I said, I want to talk to you some more. And it turns out that that Mark is a past student body president, class of '79. I found out only today that he's actually responsible for our own Patricia McAllen, as a matter of fact. Actually brought her on board when he was working as student body president back then, and has a great connection to UCF that I had no knowledge about. And I thought to myself, one of the things that in all the years that I've been coming to this particular event and attending these activities, that, you know, I'd never heard a perspective about Dr. Washington from the standpoint of a student that actually attended classes with him. And I thought Mark would be a wonderful person to come to address us today, and I thought it would be a really neat thing for having him come in and talk to us today. One of the other things I found very interesting was the slogan of his law firm, helping good people through difficult times. And I thought, how appropriate is that slogan for what Dr. Washington has meant to this campus and this campus community. So I want to bring up Mark and hear some good words from him. Mark O'Mara.
Good afternoon. As I'll tell you about in a second, I do a lot of trial work, and one thing, which sort of a rule we learned very early on, is you never want to do a closing argument right after lunch. So, unfortunately, that will happen. Now, a corollary to that rule is that I look very closely at those normally 6 people, sometimes 12 are in front of me, usually within about 10 or 12 feet, and when they start glazing over, you know it's time to finish up. So I'll need a little bit more signals. Anyone wants to just drop their head when it's time for me to be done, let me know, and I'll see what I can do about finishing up. A real quick overview of who I am. I know that it's in the program. I left New York when I was 18, graduated from high school, a baby of 5. And I was actually, my mother calls me a gift from the Virgin Mother. So for those, you know what that means for those Catholic or Christian amongst you. A bit of a mistake, but a welcome one, as it turns out, I hope. Anyway, I came down here when my dad retired from the fire department to go to UCF. Went to UCF, went through student government, we'll talk about that in a minute, went to law school, came back, was a prosecutor, and then have been practicing law ever since. But it's sort of funny when I look back and when I had a conversation with Lyman about this, it almost sounds like, we want to dramatize a little bit, because now here I am talking at the John T. Washington Luncheon. So almost says, let's make it up a little bit. The absolute, without question, truth, it was sort of strange, almost the universe deciding we're going to get together maybe, or with a little bit of God's intervention to say how we're going to get us together, because it was just an offhand comment. And quite honestly, I've had several people who had significant impact on my life, starting, of course, with my parents, pastors that went along the way, other teachers at UCF, friends and other family members. But it was interesting that when UCF was first mentioned in our conversation, that I brought up Dr. Washington. So I need to bring you back about 30 years to give you some insight as to how it sort of happened. You're going to squint your eyes a little bit, because take about 30 pounds off of me, and I still don't have a lot to give. Add on a fairly thick New York accent. It's gone for the most part, though when I go back up to recharge my batteries, it comes right back. And add long hair, glasses, hair, and I mean, I could just about, my arm went up more back then, but I could just about grab it. And I said I left I left New York, I left my car, my girlfriend, my life, and my friends. So I didn't really want to be in Orlando, which back then was about 200, 250 degrees out when I got here in September. And truly didn't really want to be here. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. My plan was to work where I was in a retail outlet and go to school at night. Thank God both my mom and my dad realized much better than I did where my life should go. So begrudgingly, I came down here and went to UCF. No, actually, I went to FTU. It is now UCF. Back then in the good old days, with, I guess, 8,000 students, we were still FTU back then. And because I had what's called a Regent Scholarship, I could get into classes even though I was a couple of weeks late, missed orientation, missed everything. It was sort of given a class schedule. But no joke, one of those classes was Introduction to Sociology with Professor John T. Washington. And it would be easy to dramatize it and say, but for Dr. Washington, I'd probably be on the streets. And that's untrue. I'm not sure exactly where it would be or if the path would be much different. I had the benefit and the luck of having some safety nets in place, having a very supportive family, having abilities to maybe falter and still get picked up by somebody else. But nonetheless, the insight that I got from Dr. Washington in that very first class was, it was subtle. I wasn't looking for it, didn't know it was coming, and it wasn't something that just hit me right in the middle of the face. It was just his sort of subtle awareness of how to present things. I made notes that I never really do in closing arguments, but I wanted to make sure I didn't miss a few of them. It was just, when I say it was subtle, it was just his way of being. It was just the way he presented himself. He didn't challenge you in an antagonistic or dramatic way. He didn't hold you up to ridicule for bad ideas, or he didn't show you how wrong yours was and take on his. What he did was he really nurtured how to present who you are in a better way, how to present who you should be, and how to get there in a better way. Obviously, the form that he took was as a professor, and it's a great opportunity for him because he had minds that were maybe more open than others in a classroom that could actually listen and take on some of the principles that he was espousing to us. The challenges that he presented was in a way of how we were and how we were acting. This is in a day that even though I thought I was aware and fully aware of it, I had gone to an all-boys Catholic high school, and it was sort of normal that we had 6 African-American students in my school. Wasn't raised prejudice, wasn't raised with any type of problems in that area, but I look back now and what I thought was normal now seems to be fairly abnormal. So when I carry that to UCF and carry that to a professor like Dr. Washington and how he presented himself and how he presented what he was going through and how to try and proffer or bring forth a better way to handle things, it was even more significant. I didn't even realize how much I appreciated what he presented to me and obviously to every other student he interacted with. I wasn't unique. I just happened to be lucky enough to be in many of his classes. But the way that he presented himself, I guess the best way to liken it was he was an ingredient. He became sort of an ingredient in who I was and what I became. And like many ingredients in any recipe, there are some big ones and there are some small ones, but there are some very significant ones. And not to sound trite with a comparison, but it seemed like Dr. Washington came across to me as sort of maybe being the yeast in the mix. You know, it wasn't all that significant, it wasn't really in your face. You couldn't necessarily look at it and say, that's a huge contribution, but without his contribution, it just wouldn't be the same. And I think if I looked at it that way, it makes the most sense to me, because I didn't leave his first class thinking, my God, my life has changed. I didn't leave his second class or his fourth class. I don't think I left UCF without realizing how much he had changed me. Because it was sort of that slow growth, that those principles that he instilled in people that really took a while to grow, I guess, but those are the most significant ones. He could easily have, been a significant but temporary impact on me, and we would never have had our conversation. It would have been some class that I enjoyed because of some way he did it, and I wouldn't have thought when somebody asked me about UCF that my first thought was to go to Dr. Washington. And he didn't suggest that his insight was because it was his birthright or because he had to. It was just his way. It was just the way that he presented himself, which quite honestly is seen by who he's become at UCF now. I mean, after all, I would imagine that there have been 1,000 professors at UCF, maybe 1,500 over the 30 years of its existence. And you can see how someone like Dr. Washington truly rise to the surface, rise to the task at difficult times. It's funny because I mentioned earlier my sort of personal experience. Another good friend of mine and somebody who I was hoping could make it here today and couldn't, and you'll know why in a second, Judge Belvin Perry, who is taken very, very busy with the good old Casey Anthony case. I think he'd rather be here. But on the other hand, he'd rather not, because I think he is the only one who can handle that enormous task with the finesse, with the principles that it takes. But I mentioned him because when I read an article about him just a couple of weeks ago, I was amazed of two things. One, that it happened, and two, that I really wasn't aware of it, that he had gotten through grammar school, high school, college, and law school without ever having a white person in his classes. And he graduated in 1972, I think. Not, at least in my terms, not truly ancient history. But when I look at, when I look at where now UCF has come, it's interesting to note both how far we've come and yet how far we've gone, both at UCF and how far we have to go, I'm sorry, both at UCF and sort of generally. And I guess I mentioned it a moment ago with Dr. Washington and sort of how his lessons seem to keep coming up and keep showing up as more of a foundation or a principle. And it's funny because I see them in my everyday life now and how I view what I do. I look back, for example, at, I've probably had 120, 130 jury trials, and 14 of them have been death penalty cases. All but one, however, has been for African Americans. That just can't be right if you really think about it. If I were to think that Dr. Washington's work was done, a lot more would have changed by now. I had the very solemn opportunity to give a eulogy for a 13-year-old niece of mine who passed away from cancer several years ago. And in trying to come up with a reason for that, I came up with a reason that the only thing that makes sense for a 13-year-old to have to pass is that God needed her spirit. God needed the soldier that she had become, even at 13, if you had known her, you'd agree, for other work. And I'm wondering why Dr. Washington was also taken what seems to be way too early in his career, way too early in the opportunities that he had to do exactly what he had been doing for the first part of his life. And the only explanation is, again, that God just needed him more where he is now than where he was. And that maybe those foundations, that yeast, if you will, that he had sort of put forth was going to grow without him, or going to grow with only him looking down instead of actively participating. So he's not done. I think we'll look at it this way. If he's done, here's what will happen. If all of his legacy is fulfilled, a meteor will drop over here in the reflecting pond. Oh well. By the way, you know why the reflecting pond was there? To avoid student demonstrations in the 60s? I learned that. I think it's true. It's true. Those who know maybe won't want to admit it, but it's true. They wanted a pool in front of the president's office so that the students who were doing it all over the country couldn't do it there. How nice. I have a better plan for it. My plan is he'll drop a meteor, it'll bounce up, turn into a statue of justice. The blindfold can be off at that point and the scales will be even. And we want to worry about trying to figure out how to do it right, because it'll be the way that it's done. There'll be other examples of it. You know, I'll do more death penalty work and it won't be 15-1. And, you know, maybe things like the population, the jail population at Orange County, and by the way, throughout the state and throughout the nation, the African-American population in that institution will equal the African-American population in general. We get there, we get to that point, Professor Washington can truly rest in peace, he can relax, he can stop having to look down and worry about everything that's not done yet, and he can take it easy. So until that time, his work's not done, he's just giving it to us, so let's try and keep that alive, keep it going, and keep trying. Thanks.
Mark, this is our appreciation. Having as guest speaker for the John T. Washington Award, and it says University of Central Florida African American Studies Program. Of appreciation to Mark Gomer, PA, keynote speaker, Dr. John T. Washington Community Service Award and Scholarship Luncheon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have one. I'm very much aware of the time, so if you all will bear with me, I will speak quickly and get everything done. We have one announcement, presentation that we would like to make to Curtis Davis. Would you come forward, please? Curtis has been such a blessing to the African American Studies program. We have gotten to the place where with the lecture series that we do every week and every month, and last year with the luncheon, he was a find that Angela Warnsice got for us. He has donated his time and his talent to our program because he believes in what we do, and we're so grateful to him for this, so that we wanted to make a presentation to him right now. So Curtis, on behalf of the African American Studies program and myself personally, I want to thank you for all that you've done and for all you continue to do for the program. Thank you very much.
First off, I want to thank the African American Studies Department for allowing me to do this. They don't understand that you guys have been a blessing to me. my 5-year-old daughter, as I was editing this, asked me, why was I doing this? And I told her that I wanted to learn more about my history, because I can't teach you your history, and you can't be the great person that God has called you to be unless I know my history. So I want to thank you guys for sowing that seed into my life so I can sow it into the next generation, so she can sow into the next generation, so that we all may know our history and we may do better. Thank you guys again.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for coming. Just a couple of quick shout outs, if you will, to our consistent supporters year after year. I'd like to first thank the UCF administration, the provost, the president who's not able to come today, the deans, the vice presidents that are here, esteemed faculty members. Thank you all so much for your support yearly. I want to thank those that helped me in a situation where I thought we need more tables. So I called a couple of people, and McNair Scholars, I want to thank Michael Alderando Jeffries for his assistance. I want to thank Rebecca McLeod for her assistance in purchasing 2 tables. I'd like to thank you all for coming. Additionally, the library continues to support us yearly, and their support has been consistent, something that I can always depend on. Enrollment, Student Development Enrollment Services, Project Spot, UCF Relations. I'm going to get in trouble if I start reading off names here. But the colleges, the various colleges, and this year we had sociology, after a little hiatus because of budget issues, they were able to come back and purchase a table today, so that we're really grateful for Jay Corzine and for his help. Thank you all very much for that. Additionally, our individual patrons, Cheryl Mahan, Dr. McLeod, of course, and Dr. Ross Howard continue to support the program. I'd like to thank very much the Planning Committee, Angela Warnsice, Miss Mary McKinney, AJ Range, and particular thanks to Mary for the beautiful flowers that you all have. You may take the flowers, but please leave the vases. Yes, thank you, Mary. A special thanks to Mel, who has always, ever since the first year that I had to do this, I said, I need an MC. Mel, help! And Mel was there to help me. He's been very good at that. So for 9 years, we have been in this as a team, and so thank you very much, Mel. Angela, you understand the inner workings of this. You understand the inner workings of me, and she has been great in putting all of this together, so I thank her. Sanisa, our winner, came to us as a volunteer, and she said, well, I'll be willing to help you all, and she didn't expect to get paid. So it's so fitting and so wonderful for us to be able to award you with the John T. Washington Scholarship. Mrs. Washington and Dr. Gardner and Mrs. Gardner, I thank you all so much for being here. I thank you that you were able to make it. It's wonderful. Carol Mundy, it's a pleasure to see you here. Thank you for holding my arms up. I appreciate it. Dolores Whitaker, I'm so thankful that you all are here. Now I'm really going to get in trouble if I start calling people out. Okay, so the last thing that I want to say is that I've been directing the program for 9 years, and during that time I've been able to, I think, amass a wonderful collection of Dr. Washington, from the speakers and from those who have given reflections, and from our website where we had a graduate student go out and just talk to various people, some of who are not here anymore. So our program has this wonderful collection of Dr. Washington that I hope the library will kind of work with us and kind of keep for the university itself. And I'm stepping down this year, but I feel good knowing that I was able to accomplish that for the university. So thank you all very much. Thank you for your patience, for your time. We look forward to seeing you again next year. Thank you.
But you know, on a personal note, can we give her a hand? 9 years, she have brought this up to the world.